Welcome back to the Roger Hedgecock Show. I'm UT editorial writer Chris Reed in for Roger. Here in San Diego, we have a mayor who is a constant fodder figure. I'm pleased to be joined now by UT Watchdog reporter Trent Seibert. Trent, the mayor makes news constantly. Not all of it good, not all of it bad, but he's a machine.
I love fodder figure. That's brilliant. I love that. He absolutely is great for news in San Diego.
I've really never seen a politician like him, and I don't necessarily mean that in a good way. So Roger's latest scandals, I'm sorry, not Roger, Robert's latest scandals involve a trip to Paris that's never really explained who paid for it, a return of a $10,000 donation to a developer that looked like extortion, and the departure of two top members of his staff. Let's take a look at Bob in action. This is from a Friday press conference, commenting on the various scandals breaking at City Hall.
So my trip to France, in summary, was a business trip that was paid for by the those who invited me to be part of a human rights conference and rally, paid for by the government bodies in Lille, the city, and their what do they call it, the provincial council government, to look at things that were helpful for our economy and for looking at our 21st century policies in renewable energy and in climate change.
In 1988, CNN's anchor Bernard Shaw famously said to Michael Dukakis, "You don't just get it, do you?" Well, Bob Filner just doesn't get it. He's the mayor. He has to explain who paid for his trip to Paris. But the bulk of the press conference Friday dealt with a developer who had been requested to give $10,000 in order to get his project advancing through city procedures. And the mayor was forced to return the money on Friday after the emergence of a voicemail that showed this pretty much was a shady quid pro quo. Let's listen in on the developer talking to Councilman Kevin Faulkner's staff.
Hi, this is Tom Story with Sunroad Enterprises. It's 11:20 on Friday, June 7th, calling to see if the mayor's office has been in communication with Kevin's office regarding item 330 next Tuesday's agenda regarding the override of the council policy. I'd like the council member to know that we have reached an agreement with the mayor's office. We have paid him the money that was requested, and I was told that the mayor would support the override, and I just seek confirmation that that message has been transmitted. My number is 858-362-8500. That's Tom Story, S-T-O-R-Y. Thanks very much.
That is Sunroad executive Tom Story leaving what could not be a more incriminating, for lack of a more precise word, email or voicemail for Councilman Kevin Faulkner. Trent, I almost wonder if Tom Story knew just what he was doing by laying out the quid pro quo in something that can be sought and properly obtained through a Public Records Act request. He kind of set the stage for getting the $100,000 back.
Well, it's interesting. There was certainly, I think there's been some talk among the press corps and among the people who have been following this, that was there some kind of CYA, for lack of a better term, at least in leaving this email, or this voicemail rather, and by the way, on the general on the most public phone.
Not the private cell of Faulkner.
That's correct. By the way, we also, as we've been looking into this, this is not the only voicemail message that Mr. Story apparently left. We understand there were at least another city council member who he left a very similar message on their voicemail, their general voicemail as well. So it's a good question, and again, it's one of these things where, Chris, the press conference and all the digging we do, it just creates more questions. I mean, it's not going away in some ways, because even though the mayor, who I found to be very charming at these press conferences, very good on his feet, very quick, very extemporaneous, I can see why he can win an election. I mean, he's very good. But even though he spent more than an hour on this press conference fielding questions from a dozen reporters in the room, there are still more questions that need to be asked, as evidenced by the fact that we're talking about this today.
Well, the thing that drives me crazy about this is the government should be ministerial in function. It should be a process that you follow, and either you get the permit or you don't. It shouldn't be conditioned on gifts to the mayor's pet causes. Now, also at that press conference Friday, the mayor acknowledged that his deputy chief of staff and his communications spokeswoman had left, and basically blamed the Sunroad debacle on the deputy chief of staff. This is almost impossible to square with Filner's reputation as a micromanager. He's a guy who knows what goes on at City Hall, and now all of a sudden this odd scheme was cooked up by an underling. Shades of Iran-Contra.
Well, it is, I think, tough to believe, and again, it creates more questions. We have the mayor here who has his hand on the till. Whether you like where the till in the boat is going, that's a whole other debate, but he is firmly in control of where the city is going and what he wants to do. So I think it did shock a lot of people when he says, oh, in this particular instance, we didn't know. In this particular instance, it was a rogue, high-level city official who closed this deal and cut this deal without letting the mayor know. It raised some eyebrows at the press conference, and in fact, we spoke to that high-level aide after the press conference. We got on the phone with him, and he says, absolutely not true what the mayor said. This mayor knew exactly what was going on, just like he knows what's going on with almost every other aspect, particularly aspects that could become public.
We don't have too much more time. One of the things that's been striking about Filner throughout his career is how absolutely certain he is that he's always in the right no matter what. Yet on Friday, he acknowledged that staff departures suggested something to him, namely that he may need to change his ways quickly. Do you think he's got a learning curve finally?
Yeah, well, he did say, hey, I've got to learn myself. I need some self-reflection. I need to look inward a little bit. It was the implication. And maybe he does. But, he won an election. He's had some victories. Maybe this direction and this attitude he's had, maybe it'll continue to work.
Thanks very much for coming on, Trent.